Copyrighted June 2013 by Doc Castellano, PhD Company, Simi Valley, California, 93063. All rights reserved. In my continuing of analyzation and presentations in raising the state of the art of the discipline of theology, theology is the study of all beliefs, I answer the toughest questions by believers and non-believers. And this tough question by a non-believer, question statement. If your God is a good God, then why is there so much crime and suffering? Now, in the New Testament, Christ proves by historical proofs, absolutely eyewitness truths and religious truths, that he raised Lazarus from the dead. Anybody who was anybody was there. Witnesses, those who say, especially the Roman soldiers who would not lie on their honor, as their honor as honorary soldier. All of these, as far away from Rome, were all there to see if Christ could and would raise Lazarus from the dead. Christ audibly prayed to God. They could hear him. Then audibly, he looked over to where Lazarus had been dead for 4 days and said, "Lazarus, come forth." And Lazarus came back to life and walked, still the burial clothes on. Absolutely undeniable historical truth and religious truth. Now, if Christ had this power, some will say, well, why didn't he save himself? That is a real tough question. In my opinion, it appears you have to recognize Jesus Christ. Jesus was born, called the incarnation, took on the form of man on earth. Then when he became an adult and began his ministry as proving Christ, the power of God, Christ, he says, I am the Son of God. You get to God through me in belief of God and his divinity. Well, you have to realize, in my opinion, that there's divine nature and human nature. And in human nature, you're born, live, and die as Jesus, a human being. But he resurrected, come back to life. Did he? He raised God, and he raised Lazarus from the dead. God, through God's power, he raised Christ back to life. Jesus Christ back to life. That has to be an absolute comprehended and realization, because it's a true historical truth and religious truth. Now, if I prove, and I believe I have, if I prove that there is universal divinity, would you, and especially you, accept the true scientific proof? I repeat with emphasis, scientific proof I'm a semi-retired world-class scientist and inventor and preacher on the internet. I'm going to emphasize it a third time because the non-believers say, well, you hear a preacher all in all. Scientific proof. The non-believers will say, where is your good God? The divinity of the universe is, the dimensions of the universe are infinite. If it takes 1,000,000 years for light to travel from a distant galaxy to Earth, if God's heaven is beyond our material universe, how can God see all and able to judge all from such a tremendous distance? Let's get scientific. I will prove universal divinity. Will you then, non-believers, pull a London Flat Earth Society refusal? From my experience with non-believers, they will say and do anything to insist and have, especially through the courts, to enforce that they are descendants of animals. Well, in my one-on-one debate, showdown debate with a PhD, and that includes the jackass. Yeah. Are you trying to tell me that at one time you and the jackass, that as they came up, were one and the same? No, he hesitated. But they don't want to take one little step of accepting anything that might be of creation, because then they'll lose the argument. So after a long hesitation, he says, yes, we all came from animals. Yeah, that includes the jackass. I says, well, it looks to me like the jackass isn't becoming man. But some men are becoming jackasses by outward insistence. I continue. Will you, when I prove universal divinity, take the stubbornness of a jackass and then pull a Flat Earth Society refusal? Let's see. In 1900, Max Planck put forth the quantum theory that of matter goes into space at a little bit quantity of quantum. And then he put forth that the energy of light is proportional to its frequency and exists in a discrete bit quantity or quantum of energy that radiates into space. In 1903, Olinto de Preto, capital B-E, capital P-R-E-T-T-O, Olinto de Preto, put forth E equals mc squared. That's 2 years before Einstein. And Einstein knew him and stole it from him. De Petro said, from a small quantity of matter, you can obtain an enormous amount of energy. Sounds like Einstein used words that De Petro used verbatim. This energy, he said, is E equals mc squared. In 1910, Arthur Haas, to 1913, when then Niels Bohr, they put forward a planetary model of the hydrogen atom. Our universe is a hydrogen universe. Now, the planetary model is you have the hydrogen atom, and the center, the mass, is a proton. It's almost all of the mass. But at a distance circles a little bit of a particle called the electron. So you realize then that if you take and have the center proton, it's almost all the mass, the sun, that's analogous to the sun, and then like the earth circling the sun. Between the sun and the earth, there's a great amount of space. And that's similar, analogous to the proton electron. An atom is mostly space. Understand that? Remember that. Now, in 1930, Wolfgang Pauli proposed a neutral particle, and that went up to 1932 when James Chadwick discovered a larger neutral particle that he called the neutron. In 1933-34, they're not exactly sure on these subatomic particles at that time. 1933-1934, Enrico Fermi wrote a paper distinguishing between Pauli's particle, Chadwick's neutron particle, and his little particle that he called neutrino. Neutrino is Italian for little neutron particle. Now, you have to now realize what the properties of a neutrino. It is of such small mass, with velocities around that of the speed of light, that it travels through space then sometimes a little less, sometimes equal, and in my opinion, greater than the speed of light. Now, when Enrico Fermi put this forward, they dismissed his scientific paper as too remote to be true. Now, how could they prove a neutrino? Because they couldn't capture one. So they came to the conclusion the neutrino is passing through all mass. It's actually passing through the mass of the Earth. I'll repeat that. Almost all neutrinos pass through the mass of the Earth. Well, you know how great, how much mass the Earth is. But the neutrinos, almost all of them pass through the mass of the Earth. So how are they going to capture one to prove Fermi's neutrino? Well, they went into a deep cave and what we called a tank of heavy water. They were able to capture a few neutrinos to prove there are neutrinos. Do you understand? Now, along comes yours truly. 1955, Doxy PhD company, I put forth the finite particle theory. This is where particles become less and less in future years, especially in the 21st century. My M prime is always becoming less than we'll say Einstein's M, towards the infinitesimal particle, which could be then, especially through mathematical physics, could be the fundamental building block of the universe that they're looking for. Now, I also then decided that in future years that there will be finer particles with greater velocity, then Einstein insisting that it has to be c, the ultimate universal velocity. I'm at 15 minutes. I don't know if I can. I'll make this is part one. I'll make it part two.